In episode 2, I showed you the 4 inner enemies: the judge, the approval seeker, the resistor, and the catastrophist. And I ended with a warning. They know where you live. They know your specific vulnerabilities, your specific wounds, the specific places where they can reach you most effectively. Today, I am giving you the solution. Not a technique, not a mindset tip, not something you do once and feel better for a day. A structure, permanent, built stone by stone, tested under the most extreme conditions in the ancient world. Marcus Aurelius called it the Inner Citadel, a place inside you so completely yours, so thoroughly fortified by values, practice, and self-knowledge, that the 4 enemies can see it, can approach it, can press against its walls, but cannot enter. In the next 25 minutes, I'm going to give you the complete architectural blueprint. Every pillar, every stone, every daily practice that Marcus Aurelius used to build and maintain it for 20 years. This is the most important episode in the series so far. And by the end of it, you're going to begin building something that nobody and nothing can ever take from you. This is episode 3 of the Marcus Aurelius Code. Welcome back to Memento Sapiens, Ancient Wisdom for the Modern Mind. We are now in episode 3 of the Marcus Aurelius Code. In episode 1, we identified the problem. You have been responding to life with a broken toolkit. In episode 2, we identified the enemy. For internal forces that exploit your deepest vulnerabilities from within. Today, we build the solution. Not a solution that requires the world to change. Not a solution that depends on other people behaving differently. Not a solution that only works when circumstances cooperate. A solution that functions identically, under pressure, under attack, under the weight of everything life throws at you, because it is built inside you from materials that no external force can remove. This is the Inner Citadel, and Marcus Aurelius left us the complete blueprint. Part 1. What the Inner Citadel actually is, and the critical distinction that most people miss. Marcus Aurelius used the term Inner Citadel in his meditations to describe something very specific. Not a state of mind that you achieve and maintain. A structure that you build and inhabit. The difference is critical. A state of mind is temporary. It can be disrupted by a single conversation, a bad day, an unexpected piece of news. You feel strong in the morning and fragile by afternoon. You feel at peace in a good week and undone in a difficult one. A structure is different. A structure persists. A structure can be temporarily strained, but it does not collapse under pressure. It was designed for pressure. Marcus Aurelius lived inside his inner citadel during plague, war, betrayal, and the knowledge that his son would likely destroy his legacy. Not because those things did not affect him. They did. He wrote about being affected with unusual honesty in the Meditations. But his responses, his decisions, his leadership, his philosophical commitments remained consistent regardless of external conditions, because they came from a structure, not from a state. Now here is what the inner citadel is not, and this is the distinction most people miss. It is not emotional numbness. Marcus Aurelius felt deeply. He grieved. He feared. He loved. The Meditations document all of it. The inner citadel is not the suppression of emotion. It is the construction of a place from which emotion can be experienced without controlling your decisions. It is not walls that keep everything out. It is a foundation so solid that whatever comes in, pain, joy, fear, pressure, can be met and processed without destabilizing the center. And it is not built once. It is built daily, stone by stone, practice by practice, decision by decision. Which brings us to the 5 pillars of construction. Every pillar is a specific area of daily practice. Miss any one of them, and the citadel has a structural weakness that the 4 enemies will find. Include all 5, and you have what Marcus Aurelius built, the place that nothing and nobody can reach. Part 2. the 5 pillars of the Inner Citadel, and exactly how Marcus Aurelius built each one. Think of these 5 pillars as the structural elements that hold the citadel together. Remove any one of them, and the structure becomes vulnerable. With all 5 in place, it becomes, in the Stoic sense, unassailable. Pillar 1, clarity of values. This is the foundation, the ground on which everything else is built. Marcus Aurelius listed his values explicitly in the Meditations, not as aspirations, but as operating principles. Justice, wisdom, courage, self-discipline. These were not things he was working toward. They were the actual basis of his daily decisions. The first pillar of your inner citadel is knowing, with precision, what you value most. Not in the abstract, in the specific. What are the 3 to 5 principles that define you at your best? Not your goals, not your preferences. Your principles, the things you will not compromise regardless of pressure, reward, or consequence. Write them down, not in your head, on paper, specific enough that you can hold them up against any decision and know whether you are aligned or not. Marcus Aurelius returned to his values in writing every single morning, not because he had forgotten them, but because the daily act of naming them was itself the first stone of construction. The citadel begins here, every day, with the question, what do I stand for specifically? Pillar 2, independence from outcomes. This is the pillar that the approval seeker and the catastrophist attack most directly. Marcus Aurelius made a distinction that changed everything for him, the distinction between what he could control and what he could not. His effort, his intentions, his choices, his values within his control. The results of those efforts, the reactions of others, the outcomes in the world, not within his control. The second pillar is building your sense of self entirely within the first category. In practice, this means give your full effort, your complete integrity, your absolute commitment to every action you take, and then release the outcome. Not because outcomes do not matter, but because your worth and your stability cannot depend on something you do not control. In your daily life, this sounds like this. I prepared for this meeting as thoroughly as I could. The outcome of the meeting is not mine to control. I am complete regardless of how it goes. Said not as performance, as genuine truth. That independence, built through daily practice, is what makes the judge's verdicts about your performance lose their power, because your worth was never attached to the performance. Pillar 3, consistency in private. This is the pillar most people underestimate, and the one that makes the greatest difference. Marcus Aurelius wrote the Meditations for no audience. He made demands of himself in private that were equal to or greater than anything he performed in public. The inner citadel is not built in how you appear to others. It is built in what you do when no one is watching. The decisions you make when there is no audience for them. The standards you hold yourself to when nobody would know if you lowered them. The choices you make at 11 p.m. on a difficult day, in private, with no one to see them. Every act of private integrity is a stone in the citadel wall. Every compromise in private is a crack. This is why the 4 enemies often attack most aggressively at night, because the walls of private consistency are thinner when you are tired, depleted, and unseen. Build them anyway, especially then. Pillar 4, honest self-assessment without self-punishment. This is the pillar that keeps the other 4 from collapsing under the weight of your own mistakes. Marcus Aurelius failed regularly. He documented failures in the Meditations with a precision that is uncomfortable to read. But notice what is absent in every failure entry. There is no self-flagellation, no catastrophizing about what the failure means, no evidence of the judge being allowed to render its verdict without examination. Instead, honest acknowledgement of what happened, clear identification of what went wrong, a course correction, and movement forward. The 4th pillar is developing this relationship with your own failures. Not, I am someone who fails. the identity collapse. Not this failure doesn't matter, the denial. But this specific thing happened. Here's why. Here is the correction. Continue. That response to failure, practiced consistently, is what allows the citadel to remain standing even on the days when you have not been your best self. Because the citadel is not a monument to perfection. It is a structure that survives imperfection. Pillar 5, present moment anchoring. This is the pillar that neutralizes the catastrophist most directly. Marcus Aurelius returned to the present moment more than any other single concept in the Meditations. Confine yourself to the present. You can leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Do not indulge in dreams of what you have not. He was not practicing mindfulness as relaxation. He was practicing present moment anchoring as a structural element of his psychological architecture. Because the inner citadel exists only in the present. The catastrophist lives in the future. The judge and the resistor live in the past and the future simultaneously. The approval seeker lives in the anticipated future reactions of others. None of them can fully operate in the pure present. The more completely you can anchor in the present moment, the specific, actual, currently happening reality of right now, the less access the four enemies have to your decision-making. The fifth pillar is built through a simple daily practice. Once per hour, not continuously, once per hour, ask yourself, what is actually happening right now, separate from what I fear it means or what I imagine will happen next? That question, asked consistently, builds the present moment anchoring that is the fifth wall of the citadel. Part 3. The one question that determines whether the 5 pillars hold under pressure. Marcus Aurelius spent 20 years in Stoic practice before he formulated this question. It is not complex. It is not philosophical. It is this. Am I being the person I said I would be, right now, in this moment, in this choice? Not am I winning. Not is everything going well. Not do people approve of what I am doing. Am I, right now, being the person I committed to being? This question functions as a structural integrity test for the inner citadel. When everything is going well, it confirms alignment. When everything is falling apart, it provides orientation. When you're in the middle of a conflict and do not know how to respond, it cuts through the noise. When a judge is rendering its verdict and the catastrophist is projecting its worst-case scenario, this question bypasses both of them entirely. Because it does not ask for their input. It asks for yours. And your answer, not the judge's verdict, not the approval seeker's reading of the room, is the only evaluation that matters for the stability of the structure. Marcus Aurelius asked himself this question every morning before the day began. He asked it in the Senate before difficult decisions. He asked it after failures, after conflicts, after the days when he knew he had not been at his best. And consistently, over 20 years, the act of asking the question returned him to the structure. Not because the question had a perfect answer every time, but because the act of asking it was itself a return to the values that formed the foundation of the citadel. Try it today, this moment. Am I being the person I said I would be, right now, in this specific moment? Whatever your answer, the act of asking has already begun reinforcing the structure. Part 4. The most counterintuitive truth about the inner citadel and why it changes everything about how you relate to difficulty. Here is what Marcus Aurelius discovered that most people who talk about inner strength never address. The inner citadel is not protected by avoiding difficulty. It is built by it, not despite the difficult people. Because of them. Not despite the betrayal. Because of it, not despite the failures, the losses, the moments when the 4 enemies operated at full capacity and you responded in ways that disappointed you. Because of all of it, every difficult interaction that you respond to from your values, however imperfectly, adds a stone to the wall. Every moment you find the observer position under pressure, however briefly, reinforces a pillar, Every time you ask, am I being the person I said I would be in a difficult moment, the structure grows stronger. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Applied to the inner citadel, the thing trying to breach the walls is the same thing that makes the walls thicker. This is why the people in your life who cause you the most difficulty are not obstacles to your development. They're your primary construction materials. Not because what they do is acceptable, not because you should tolerate what is harmful, but because your response to them, the choice you make in the gap between their action and your reaction, is the daily building practice that no amount of comfortable circumstances could ever provide. The inner citadel cannot be built in the absence of things that test it. It can only be built by meeting those things consistently, repeatedly, imperfectly from the 5 pillars. And every single difficult person in your life is, in the Stoic sense, a gift. The most unwelcome kind, but a gift nonetheless. Part 5. The 7 daily practices, the actual construction work of the inner citadel. These are not suggestions. They are the documented daily practices of Marcus Aurelius, extracted from the Meditations and organized into a sequence that mirrors how he actually built his structure. Practice 1. The morning values declaration. Before any external input enters your day, before the phone, the news, any conversation, spend 60 seconds stating your 3 to 5 core values out loud. Not reading them, stating them as current, active truth. I am a person who acts with integrity. I am a person who responds from wisdom rather than reaction. I am a person who does not need external approval to know my own worth. This is the daily foundation laying. The citadel begins here. Practice 2. The premeditation of difficulty. Immediately after the values declaration, spend 60 seconds identifying the most likely challenge of your day, the specific conversation, the specific person, the specific situation. Ask, which of the 4 inner enemies is most likely to be activated here? Decide in advance who you are going to be in that situation before it arrives. Practice 3. The observer check-in. 3 times during your day, morning, midday, evening. Pause for 30 seconds and ask yourself, which of the 4 enemies is most active right now? Can I observe it without being inside it? This is the daily training of the observer position. Like any muscle, it only develops through use. Practice 4. The integrity action. Once per day, identify one action that aligns with your values and costs you something. Not something catastrophic, something real. The difficult conversation you have been avoiding. The commitment you made that requires effort today. The choice to respond from your values rather than your comfort. 1 action per day. Every day. That is the stone being laid in the wall. Practice 5. The evening review. This is the practice from Epictetus that Marcus Aurelius adapted into his own. 3 questions. Every night, without exception, what did I respond from my values today? Name it specifically. What did I fail to respond from my values today? Name it specifically, without judgment. What is the one adjustment for tomorrow? Not a list of failures. Not self-punishment. A precise, honest, forward-looking review. Practice 6. The perspective reset. Once per week, not daily, apply the Stoic view from above. Zoom out from your current situation to its place in the larger context of your life, your relationships, your era, the sweep of history. Not to minimize what you're dealing with, but to see it in proportion. Marcus Aurelius used this practice to make genuinely measured decisions during the plague. When everything feels catastrophic, the view from above reveals which elements are actually critical and which are amplified by the catastrophist. Practice 7. The gratitude for difficulty. This is the most advanced practice. Do not begin with it. Build the first 6 consistently before adding this one. Once per week. Identify the most difficult thing that happened and ask, how has this difficulty contributed to the construction of my inner citadel? Not performed positivity. A genuine architectural assessment. What stone did this difficulty provide? Where is the citadel stronger today because of what you faced this week? That assessment, done honestly, is what transforms difficulty from something that happens to you into something that builds you. Part 6. What Marcus Aurelius wrote when the inner citadel finally held, and what that means for you. In the later years of his meditations, written during the most difficult period of his reign, something changes in the tone of his writing. The earlier entries have an urgency to them, a quality of someone actively battling the 4 inner enemies, actively working to maintain the observer position, actively fighting to find the gap between stimulus and response. The later entries have a different quality, not calm in the sense of everything being fine. His circumstances were objectively more difficult in those later years, but settled, grounded, operating from a structure that had been tested enough times that he trusted it completely. He wrote in this period, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Notice, he was not writing, "You will find peace," or "You will find happiness." He wrote strength. The inner citadel does not produce a life free from difficulty. Marcus Aurelius's life is proof of that. It produces something more valuable than freedom from difficulty. It produces the capacity to meet difficulty from a stable center, consistently, repeatedly, without the center being destabilized by what it meets. That is what the 7 practices build. That is what the 5 pillars hold. That is what the daily question maintains. And it is available to you, not when everything is better, not when the difficult people change, not when circumstances finally cooperate, but starting with the practice you choose to begin today. Because the inner citadel does not appear fully built. It appears 1 stone at a time. And the first stone is always the next right action. Starting now. Episode 3, The Inner Citadel, in full. What it is, a permanent structure, not a temporary state. Built from materials no external force can remove. 5 pillars: clarity of values, independence from outcomes, consistency in private, honest self-assessment without self-punishment, present moment anchoring. The one question that tests structural integrity: am I being the person I said I would be right now? The counterintuitive truth: the citadel is not protected from difficulty. It is built by it. 7 daily practices: values declaration, premeditation of difficulty, observer check-in, integrity action, evening review, weekly perspective reset, gratitude for difficulty. What produces? Not freedom from difficulty. The stable center that meets difficulty without being destabilized by it. Now, you have the structure. But there is something I need to tell you about the inner citadel that will be tested the moment you leave this video. You're going to go back into your life, and your life contains specific people. Specific people who have been there before any of this, before the observer position, before the 5 pillars, before the 7 practices. People who know the version of you that existed before episode 1. And some of those people, the ones we will talk about in episode 4, are going to test everything you have built. Not because they're trying to, but because there is one specific type of wound that the inner citadel is most vulnerable to. The wound that comes from inside the walls. From someone you let in. From someone you trusted completely. And what Marcus Aurelius did when that happened, when the person he trusted most in the world turned against him, is the most important and most heartbreaking episode in this entire series. Episode 4. The Betrayal, drops Friday. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this episode with someone who is trying to build something unbreakable inside themselves. They need this blueprint. Remember to be wise. Memento Sapiens.